In this chapter, we're going to be looking at Python input-output, primarily output being how do we print data to the screen, and input being how do we receive data from the keyboard. In the first lesson, we're going to look at simple uses of the print function. Then in the second lesson, we'll look at how to do print redirection so that we can print to a device other than the screen. And then finally, in the third lesson, we're going to look at how to get data into our programs from the keyboard. So for this first lesson, we're going to use the interactive shell to do some very simple print work. So we'll open that up with Python. First thing I want to do is create a couple of variables. And then to display the value of a variable, we simply put that variable inside parentheses and send that as an argument to the print function, and it prints the value. So we can do that for really any type of data. So if we created a list like so, as you can imagine, it works with any type of data or data structure that we provide. And of course, it works with literals as well as literal expressions, such as concatenation or arithmetic, and any other type of expression that you can imagine. You can also use the comma to print out the data as a tuple, like you see right here, where we said print word comma number, and it printed hello and 100 inside a tuple. You'll notice it's a tuple by the open and close parentheses that you see there. If you try to print this same data using concatenation, then you see a problem because Python does not like you to try to concatenate a int to a string expression. So what we needed to do right here was we needed to use the string function, str, to convert number to a string, and then it works just fine. The only other example I want to provide in this lesson, because again, I don't want to get into too many arcane details. What we need to be able to do is just see how to print regular data. We do, though, want to look at one other little more advanced topic, and that's format strings. A lot of times you'll see that covered in a chapter or section on strings. I decided to save it for print, since format strings really only come into play when you're trying to print data. So for example, if we have some data like this, and we want to display that in one string, what we might do is create what's called a format string. If you've done any C or C++ programming, or even Java, although it's not so prevalent in Java, you'll have probably worked with format strings, especially if you've done any C programming. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a format string, and I'm going to just give it a name. And a format string will consist of different ways of telling Python how to display data, in fact, what data is coming. So here I'm saying that the first piece of data is a string. That's what the %string sign is. And then I'm going to put a colon because I want that to separate the name from the grade. Then the next piece of data, again, we begin it with a % sign, is going to be a floating point number that I want to display to 2 decimal places. So you see the %.2f saying it's a floating point number and we want to display 2 decimal points. And that's all for the string, so we stop it there. Then I use a % sign, and then I say what data do I want to provide, name and grade. And then that becomes my record, and then if I say print record, then it prints that data using the format string. Format strings can get quite a bit more complex than this. I wanted to show you the simplest example, and then you can certainly go to the Python documentation if you want to see more advanced examples of how format strings work. We won't be working with format strings in this course other than to demonstrate it right here. My goal here is to cover all the introductory material that you need, and I'm much more interested in processes of computation rather than how to display data. You can always go to the documentation to get some better ideas about how to display the data once you've processed it correctly. So that wraps up this lesson on the print function, and we're ready to move to the second lesson where we're going to look at how to perform print redirection, where we send data not to the screen but to some other device, such as a file.